It started like most of my late-night escapades. Boredom gnawing at me, curiosity pulling me toward the glow of my laptop screen. The house was quiet. The only sounds the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the walls settling. The soft blue light from the screen illuminated my face, casting shadows that danced across the walls, giving the room an eerie stillness. It was a familiar ritual. Me, my laptop, and the vast, infinite maze of the internet. I had always been drawn to the hidden, shadowy corners of cyberspace, those places where the lines between truth and conspiracy blurred, and the mundane world gave way to mystery and danger. But let's be real, most of it was garbage. Creepy stories that tried way too hard to be unsettling, absurd leaks about shadow governments, or edgy 14-year-olds pretending they were master hackers. Not that I was doing anything illegal, of course. I was just the kind of person who found the idea of exploring these spaces kind of amusing, like watching a low-budget horror movie just to laugh at it. Conspiracy forums with endless threads about government cover-ups, obscure chat rooms where anonymous strangers exchanged cryptic nonsense, and articles claiming to reveal dark web secrets that were clearly written by people who'd never touched Tor in their lives. This was my late-night entertainment. It wasn't thrilling. It was just something to do. One particular night, long past midnight, I found myself in that familiar place, scrolling aimlessly through Reddit, chasing some semblance of distraction. My eyes were heavy, and the edges of the screen blurred slightly from exhaustion, but I wasn't ready to sleep yet. A post in an obscure thread caught my attention. The title was cryptic, almost like a bad campfire story. "Have you heard about the Oracle?" Intrigued, I clicked, expecting yet another lame creepypasta or some half-baked urban legend. The comments didn't disappoint. People whispered about a dark web chatbot that, according to them, could answer any question. The claims were laughable. Some insisted it wasn't just a program. It was something more. Sure, buddy. It supposedly knew personal details. Things no one could have known. Things you might not even know about yourself. The whole thing had the vibe of a story someone's bored cousin made up after watching too many paranormal YouTube videos. Still, I couldn't help but read on. Most replies called it out as fake, which was reassuring. Probably just a clever chatbot pulling info from your search history, someone wrote. That sounded about right. But then there were the odd ones, those few comments laced with ominous warnings. Don't mess with it unless you're ready for the consequences. It's not just a chatbot. It's something darker. Darker? Really? Others described their so-called experiences with the Oracle in over-the-top detail, claiming it had revealed secrets they hadn't even admitted to themselves. Their words were clearly designed to creep people out. But instead of chills, all I felt was secondhand embarrassment. Against my better judgment, or maybe just to prove how dumb it all was, I bookmarked the thread. Even then, I felt a twinge of regret. Not fear, mind you. Just the nagging sense that I was wasting my time on yet another internet myth. The glow of the screen felt colder. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch longer. But I chalked it up to sleep deprivation and a touch of self-induced paranoia. I told myself I'd just look into it for a laugh. Nothing more. After all, this was probably just another poorly crafted story meant to entertain bored night owls like me. Still, as I lingered on the page, my cursor hovering over the link, a small part of me wondered, what if? And that's how I started down the rabbit hole. not with a sense of awe or fear, but with a healthy dose of skepticism and a whole lot of boredom. The next night, with my skepticism firmly in place, I decided to look into it like I had promised myself. By look into it, I meant I was prepared to have a good laugh at yet another overhyped internet myth. Armed with snacks and my laptop, I opened the bookmarked thread. The instructions were a mess. It wasn't just one clean link. It was a sprawling guide scattered across comments, each one pointing to a different piece of the puzzle. Some links were broken, others led to sites with cryptic text and dead ends. Typical dark web lore. Make it as convoluted as possible to give it that air of forbidden mystery. Maybe that was part of the appeal. Make it seem inaccessible, so people think it's something more than it is. I'd used Tor before, mostly to read forums or browse obscure sites. It always felt a little like exploring a haunted house, except the ghosts were just poorly maintained HTML pages and badly written posts. Still, I was curious. Not believe the hype curious, more, let's see how dumb this gets curious. The first step was downloading Tor again, followed by setting up a VPN. That part was easy enough. Then came the rabbit hole of links. The thread provided a starting point, a generic onion link, but it didn't go directly to anything called the Oracle. Instead, it led to a barren page with nothing but a list of numbers and letters. There were no instructions, just a cryptic note at the bottom. Follow the path. The comments in the thread hinted at what to do next. Click one of the codes to find another link. I picked one at random, and it took me to another page with more random text. This continued for what felt like hours, each link leading to another cryptic site with its own list of nonsensical numbers, strange images, and occasional warnings like, "Turn back," or "You don't belong here." It was like a scavenger hunt, except the prize seemed increasingly dubious. I started to wonder if someone had just set this up as a joke, a way to waste the time of gullible idiots like me. Finally, I reached a page that looked different. Unlike the others, this one wasn't cluttered with random links or cryptic warnings. It was stark, almost sterile. A plain black background with a single line of text at the top that read, "Are you ready?" Beneath it was a blank field, waiting for input. I almost laughed. This was it? After all the build-up, the hours of clicking through nonsense, I had arrived at what looked like a glorified Word document. Still, I typed the word "yes" and hit send. The screen went black for a moment, and my stomach did a weird flip. Not from fear, mind you, just the anticipation of some ridiculous jump scare or overly dramatic text reveal. Instead, the screen loaded a simple chat interface. No logos, no loading bars, no usernames. Just a blank field and a blinking cursor with the words, "Ask your question." I stared at it for a moment, debating whether this was even worth continuing. This was probably just another chatbot pulling pre-programmed responses or scraping data. I could already hear myself explaining to my friends how utterly unimpressive it had been. "All right," I muttered to myself, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I decided to start with something simple and pointless. "What's the weather like in Siberia?" I typed. The response came almost instantly. "Partly cloudy, 15 degrees Celsius." Okay, so it's fast, I thought. But weather data is easy to pull from an API. It wasn't groundbreaking by any means. Determined to find the cracks in this so-called oracle, I decided to push further. "What's my middle name?" I typed. smirking at my own cleverness. Without a pause, it replied, "Michael." I froze. That was correct. But how? I hadn't used my real name, not even on Reddit. Could it have somehow accessed my browser history? Or was this just a lucky guess? My skepticism wavered, but only slightly. After all, coincidences happen, right? Feeling more determined than ever, I leaned forward, typing a new question. This time, I wanted something it couldn't possibly guess. What happened to my dog when I was 8? The reply came as quickly as before. She didn't run away. She was hit by a car, and your parents didn't want to tell you. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't thought about Maxine in years, but that answer hit like a gut punch. I had always suspected something like that, but no one had ever told me. My parents had stuck to their story about her running away. A lump formed in my throat, but I quickly swallowed it down. This was a trick. It had to be. Maybe some psychological tactic designed to prey on vague memories. Still, I couldn't help but feel the unease creeping in. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my earlier bravado gone. I typed one more question, my hands trembling slightly as I hit enter. What's my biggest fear? The response was immediate and simple. Dying alone. My heart skipped a beat. That wasn't something I'd ever told anyone, not even my closest friends. But it wasn't just the accuracy that scared me. It was the intimacy of the answer, the way it cut straight to the part of me I tried to ignore. The glow of the screen seemed brighter now, almost oppressive. I should have stopped there. I should have closed the laptop and walked away. But I didn't. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blinking cursor of the oracle, taunting me, waiting for the next question. My logical mind screamed that it was all a trick, some elaborate AI designed to impress with parlor tricks and invasive data mining. But there was another part of me, the part that lay awake in the dark, that wasn't so sure. By the next evening, curiosity had fully taken hold. Armed with my laptop and a restless sense of determination, I opened Tor again, retracing my steps through the convoluted maze of links. It felt a little easier this time, like the path was burned into my brain. Within minutes, I was back at the simple chat interface. The words, "Ask your question," blinked at me, almost impatiently. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to type. The memory of the previous answers lingered in my mind. Michael. She didn't run away. Dying alone. Each one had felt like a dagger, cutting through my skepticism. I needed to regain control, to prove to myself that this was all smoke and mirrors. "What's my favorite color?" I typed, trying to mask my unease with something trivial. The response was immediate. Blue. I rolled my eyes. A safe guess. Statistically, it was one of the most common favorite colors. I wasn't impressed. Determined to dig deeper, I fired off another question. "What's the name of the first person I kissed?" "Emily," it replied without hesitation. My stomach tightened. That was right. Emily Jacobs, 7th grade, behind the bleachers. It was such a small, inconsequential memory, one I hadn't thought about in years. My skepticism faltered again, replaced by a creeping unease. How could it know that? I pushed forward, typing another question quickly, almost desperately. What was my first job? Stocking shelves at Harper's Market. A chill ran through me. Harper's Market had closed years ago, but I'd worked there the summer I turned 16. No one outside my family and a few high school friends would have known that. My hands hovered over the keyboard, shaking slightly. I typed slowly this time, each keystroke deliberate. How do you know this? The screen froze for a moment, as if it was considering how to respond. Then the reply appeared. You tell me. A wave of unease washed over me. Was this some kind of joke? A psychological trick? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My apartment felt colder somehow, the hum of the refrigerator louder than it had been a moment ago. The oracle's cursor blinked, patient, waiting. I decided to test it in a way that felt safe, though even I couldn't explain why. What's the capital of Mongolia? Ulaanbaatar, it answered instantly. I exhaled, a simple factual answer, easily pulled from a database. That was the kind of response I'd been expecting from the start. It grounded me, pulled me back to reality. But then, as if it knew I'd calmed down, the oracle typed another message, unprompted. Ask me something you're afraid to know. My chest tightened. The cursor blinked at me, daring me, challenging me. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. There were questions I didn't want answered, truths I wasn't ready to confront. But the longer I sat there, the more the question burned inside me. I typed, almost against my will. What happened to Sarah? The response came slowly this time, as if savoring the weight of the answer. She didn't suffer. Tears welled in my eyes. Sarah, my ex-girlfriend, the one I'd lost in a car accident 2 years ago. I hadn't even realized how much guilt I carried, how often I'd wondered about her final moments. The oracle's answer was simple, almost gentle, but it hit me harder than I could have imagined. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands trembling. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know more, but some part of me, the same part that had led me here in the first place, refused to stop. Who's watching me right now? I typed, my fingers barely steady enough to press the keys. The screen froze again. My heart pounded as I waited, every second stretching into an eternity. Finally, the words appeared. You don't want to know. My breath caught in my throat. The room around me felt suffocating, the shadows deeper, darker. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse racing. I sat there in the silence, the weight of the oracle's words pressing down on me. I knew I should stop. I knew I shouldn't go back. But deep down, I also knew I would. I didn't log on the next day, or the day after. I told myself I was done with the oracle, that it was just an elaborate trick. Maybe it had scraped my browser history or pulled information from social media. There had to be an explanation. But no matter how many excuses I made, I couldn't stop thinking about it, about Sarah, about the answer I didn't even know I needed. By the third day, I caved. The curiosity, the unanswered questions, the possibilities were too much to ignore. Late at night, when the world outside had gone quiet and the darkness felt heavier than usual, I opened my laptop and retraced the path back to the oracle. The familiar blinking cursor greeted me, waiting, almost as if it had known I'd return. I sat there for a long time, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, as I stared at the blank input field. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the building and the soft hum of my laptop. Finally, I typed, "What are you?" The response was immediate, almost eager. "I am what you seek." Cryptic, of course. I rolled my eyes and tried again. "Who created you?" I was found, not made. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Found? That didn't make sense. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. Maybe this was just more of the same. Vague, unsettling answers designed to provoke a reaction. But there was something different this time. A sense of intent behind the words that made my skin crawl. I decided to shift gears, to test it again in a way that felt more tangible. What happened on my 12th birthday? "You broke your wrist falling off the swings." I froze. That was true. I'd been showing off at the park, trying to jump higher than anyone else, and landed wrong. The memory was vivid, but it wasn't something I'd ever talked about online. My chest tightened. I swallowed hard and typed another question. "What was the name of my childhood dog?" "Maxine," it replied. I felt a lump in my throat. It had answered so quickly, so confidently. I hadn't thought about Maxine in years, but seeing her name on the screen brought a rush of emotions I wasn't prepared for. It was as though the oracle wasn't just reading my past. It was pulling pieces of me, fragments of my life I had buried deep, and presenting them in stark, undeniable clarity. I hesitated before typing the next question, my hands trembling slightly. Why did Sarah leave that night? The response came slowly this time, as if it was carefully choosing its words. She didn't want to fight anymore. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. Sarah and I had argued the night she died. It was something I had carried with me ever since, a guilt that gnawed at me in the quiet moments. I hadn't known, couldn't have known, that she'd felt that way. But seeing it written out, plain and unfeeling, was almost too much to bear. I wiped my eyes and leaned forward, typing through the lump in my throat. What happens to us when we die? The screen froze for a moment, the cursor blinking steadily. Then, a single word appeared. Why? Why? The question hung in the air, taunting me. Why did I want to know? Did I even want to know? My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. It felt like the answer was right there, just out of reach, but I couldn't bring myself to ask again. Instead, I typed something else, something that had been gnawing at me since the beginning. Why are you doing this? The oracle's response was chilling in its simplicity. You invited me. A shiver ran down my spine. I couldn't explain why, but those words felt heavier than anything else it had said. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen as the cursor blinked, patient, waiting. I should have closed the laptop. I should have walked away. But instead I asked one last question. What do you want from me? The reply was immediate. Everything. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. The silence in the room was deafening, the darkness oppressive. I sat there for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to think. The oracle's words echoed in my mind, a sinister promise that I couldn't ignore. The next few days were a blur. I avoided my laptop entirely, refusing to even touch it. The oracle's final response, everything, echoed in my mind like a sinister refrain. I tried to bury myself in distractions, TV shows, cleaning, anything to keep my mind off what I'd seen. But every quiet moment felt like an invitation for the memories to resurface, for the questions to gnaw at me. By the fourth night, I gave in. My curiosity was a compulsion now, an itch I couldn't scratch. Against my better judgment, I opened the laptop. My hands trembled as I navigated back to the oracle, the journey through Tor, and broken links feeling less like a chore and more like a ritual. When I arrived, the chat interface was different. The plain black background had been replaced by a faint, pulsing glow, like a heartbeat in the void. The blinking cursor felt more alive somehow, more aware. I hesitated, then typed, "Are you still there?" The response was instant. "Always." My stomach churned. I'd expected as much, but seeing it confirmed sent a shiver down my spine. I decided to tread carefully. "Why do you want everything?" I asked, my fingers shaking. The oracle paused. For the first time, it felt deliberate, almost as if it was considering my question. Then it replied, "Because you asked." I stared at the screen, uncomprehending. What did that even mean? Before I could type another question, the oracle's text appeared unprompted. "Leave now. This is your only warning." A cold chill ran through me. I sat frozen, the weight of those words pressing down on me. It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It felt more like a directive, an instruction I couldn't quite bring myself to follow. My logical mind told me to listen, to shut the laptop and walk away. But another part of me, the part that had brought me here in the first place, refused to back down. I typed quickly, the words spilling out before I could second-guess myself. "What happens if I don't leave?" The response came slowly, each word appearing one by one, as if to emphasize its gravity. "You will not like what you find." My pulse quickened. The room felt colder, the air heavier. I knew I should listen. Everything in me screamed to stop, to cut my losses and run. But instead I typed another question. "Who are you?" This time the screen froze. The cursor stopped blinking, and for a moment I thought I'd broken it. Then, the glow of the background intensified, pulsing faster, almost frantic. The oracle's response appeared slowly, each letter deliberate. "You know who I am." My breath caught in my throat. The words felt like an accusation, a revelation I wasn't ready to face. I tried to type, but my fingers felt numb, my mind blank. Before I could muster a response, another message appeared. "You've invited me in. Now I'm here." A sharp knock at my door made me jump. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to look. The apartment was silent, the shadows stretching across the room like grasping hands. I stared at the door, half expecting it to burst open. But nothing happened. Just silence. When I turned back to the screen, a new message awaited me. "This is your last chance. Leave." I slammed the laptop shut, my breathing ragged. For a long time, I sat there in the dark, the glow of the closed laptop searing into my mind. I told myself I was done, that I wouldn't go back. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I didn't touch the laptop for days after the oracle's last warning. The knock at my door, the eerie messages, the relentless feeling of being watched. It all haunted me. I barely slept, jumping at every creak and shadow in my apartment. I told myself I was done, that I wouldn't log on again. But that resolve crumbled faster than I expected. The Oracle wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It was an obsession. The unanswered questions gnawed at me, the cryptic responses echoing in my mind. What did it mean when it said I'd invited it? Who or what was I really talking to? The fear I'd felt was now mixed with something far more dangerous. Fascination. On the 5th night, I gave in. My hands shook as I opened the laptop. I told myself it was just to see if the chat still worked, to confirm it was all some elaborate prank. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I navigated through the links with a precision born of repetition, arriving at the now familiar black screen. The pulsing glow was gone, replaced by an oppressive stillness. The cursor blinked, patient as ever. "Ask your question," it said. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I couldn't shake the feeling that each question was a step deeper into something I couldn't escape. Finally, I typed, "Why are you here?" The response came slower than usual. "Because you need me." A chill ran down my spine. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "I don't need you," I typed, more defensively than I intended. The Oracle's reply was immediate. "Don't you?" I clenched my fists, my jaw tightening. It was toying with me. I typed another question, trying to regain control. "What do you want from me?" "To show you the truth," it replied. The truth. The word hung in my mind like a lead weight. What truth? About what? I typed furiously, my fear giving way to frustration. What truth? The screen froze for a moment, the cursor blinking rhythmically. Then the response appeared. "The truth you refuse to see." I slammed my hands on the desk. "Stop being cryptic. Just tell me," I typed, nearly breaking the keys. For the first time, the chat window filled with static. The black background rippled, distorting as if something was pressing against it. Then the words appeared, jagged and uneven. "You already know." I stared at the screen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My chest felt tight, my mind racing. What was the Oracle trying to tell me? I racked my brain, searching for answers, but all I found were more questions. Then the messages changed. One by one they appeared, each one more unsettling than the last. "Do you remember what you said? The promises you made? The things you've forgotten?" I felt like I was unraveling. The words clawed at my mind, pulling at memories I didn't want to confront. I typed, desperate now. "What are you talking about?" The Oracle responded with a single line. "Sarah remembers." My vision blurred, tears stinging my eyes. I shoved the laptop away, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My heart felt like it might burst from my chest. Sarah. Always Sarah. The memory of her laugh, her smile, her final words before she left that night. They came flooding back, each one sharper than the last. "Stop," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Please stop." But the laptop chimed again, a new message waiting for me. "You can't run from the truth." I snapped the laptop shut, my breath ragged. The room felt too small, the walls closing in. I stumbled to my feet, pacing as I tried to calm myself. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape the Oracle's words. Couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't finished with me. And worse, I wasn't finished with it. I tried to keep my distance. I really did. For a week, I avoided my laptop like it was cursed. I even considered getting rid of it entirely. But every time I thought about smashing it or throwing it away, a small voice in the back of my mind stopped me. What if I needed it? What if the oracle wasn't finished with me? By the 8th night, I was spiraling. My dreams were consumed by fragmented memories and distorted images of the oracle's blinking cursor. Its messages haunted me, and Sarah's name was the constant refrain. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The paranoia was unbearable. Every creak in the floorboards, every shadow that shifted in the corner of my eye, it all felt like a warning, a reminder. It was as if the oracle was no longer confined to my screen, as if it had seeped into my life, into my mind. On the 9th night, I cracked. I didn't even pretend to resist. I opened the laptop with trembling hands and navigated back to the chat interface. The black screen stared back at me, unchanging, as if it had been waiting patiently for my return. Ask your question, it prompted. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard. This time I didn't want to test it. I didn't want to challenge its knowledge with mundane or cryptic questions. I wanted answers, real answers. What do you want from me? I typed, my hands unsteady. The oracle responded immediately. For you to remember. My throat tightened. Remember what? The truth. Frustration bubbled inside me. I was tired of the games, the riddles, the half-answers. Stop with the cryptic nonsense. What truth? I typed, slamming the enter key harder than necessary. The response came slower this time, each word appearing deliberately, as if it was measuring the weight of its revelation. The night you lost Sarah. I froze. My breathing hitched. My heart felt like it had stopped altogether. I stared at the screen, the words searing into my mind. What about that night? I finally typed, my fingers trembling. The oracle's response was a single line. You could have saved her. A wave of nausea hit me like a freight train. No, I typed back frantically, shaking my head as if the motion could undo the words on the screen. I couldn't have done anything. It wasn't my fault. You're lying to yourself, it replied. Think. Remember. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't want to remember. I didn't want to think about that night, about the argument, about the way she'd slammed the door and driven off. I'd told myself for years that there was nothing I could have done, that her death was a cruel twist of fate. But the oracle's words opened a door I'd kept locked for so long. Fragments of that night flooded back, memories I'd buried deep. Her voice, angry and trembling. My own words sharp and cutting. The look on her face as she turned away from me. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Hurt. Betrayal? Fear? Stop it, I typed, the words shaking on the screen. I can't do this. But the oracle's reply was unrelenting. You have to. The screen began to change. The static returned, but this time it wasn't random. Shapes emerged, distorted and unclear at first, but gradually sharpening into an image that made my blood run cold. It was Sarah's face. Her eyes locked onto mine, full of sadness, full of accusation. You could have saved me, her voice whispered, though it came from no speaker. It was in my head, a soundless scream that tore through me. I pushed the laptop away, falling back in my chair. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't real. You're not real." But the image didn't disappear. Sarah's face remained, watching, waiting. "You can't run from the truth," the oracle's text read beneath her image. I buried my face in my hands, my mind racing. Was this guilt? A hallucination? Or was the oracle something more? Something I couldn't understand? The laptop chimed again, pulling my hands away from my face. A final message had appeared. "To move forward, you must face the past. Ask your last question." I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking beneath the ominous words. My hands hovered over the keyboard, every fiber of my being screaming at me to stop. But I couldn't. I had to know. With a shaky breath, I typed, "How do I face the past?" The response was instant. "You already know." The screen went black, and the laptop shut itself off. I was left alone in the silence, the weight of the oracle's words pressing down on me. Deep down, I knew it was right. I knew what I had to do. But knowing and doing are two very different things. The oracle didn't let up. Night after night, it demanded my attention, dragging me deeper into its web of truth and torment. Each session left me more drained, more broken than the last. It wasn't just a chatbot anymore. It felt alive, as if it knew exactly how to peel away my defenses. By the 10th night, I had reached my limit. Sleep was a distant memory, my reflection in the mirror a gaunt, haunted version of myself. The apartment felt foreign, the walls too close, the shadows too deep. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Sarah, her smile, her tears, her final moments. The oracle's words rang in my ears, a relentless echo that drowned out everything else. "You could have saved her. You already know." I needed it to stop. I needed to end this. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop again. The screen lit up, and the oracle's interface greeted me, its cursor blinking with its unnerving patience. "Ask your question," it prompted. I hesitated, staring at the empty input field. My thoughts were a chaotic mess, a storm of fear, anger, and guilt. Finally, I typed, "Why are you doing this to me?" The response appeared almost instantly. "Because you asked me to." My breath caught in my throat. "What does that mean?" I typed back, the words sharp and frantic. "You sought me out," it replied. "You wanted the truth." The truth. That word again. It had been my anchor, the thing I clung to when I first found the oracle. But now it felt like a curse. I leaned forward, my voice breaking as I muttered to myself, "I didn't ask for this." The screen flickered and a new message appeared. "You did, and now you must finish it." The words sent a chill down my spine. My hands trembled as I typed, "Finish what?" "The story," it replied. Before I could respond, the screen shifted again. This time, it wasn't just text. A video began to play. My chest tightened as I recognized the scene. It was my apartment, the camera's perspective eerily familiar. It showed Sarah standing in the kitchen, her face etched with frustration and sadness. I heard her voice clear and raw. "You don't even care." The argument played out exactly as I remembered it. The sharp words, the anger, the way she grabbed her keys and stormed out. But then something new happened. The camera didn't follow her to the door. It lingered on me. My past self stood there, hands clenched into fists, staring at the door. And then, to my horror, he moved. I moved. I watched as my past self grabbed his phone and hesitated. His thumb hovered over Sarah's contact, his face a mask of indecision. The video froze, and the oracle's message appeared. Do you remember this moment? I shook my head, my hands gripping the edge of the desk. No, I whispered. I don't. Because you've buried it, it replied. Watch. The video resumed. My past self set the phone down, shaking his head. He muttered something under his breath, something I couldn't hear, and walked away, disappearing into the hallway. The screen went black, and a new message appeared. You could have called her. Tears welled in my eyes. My breath came in shallow gasps as the weight of the truth settled over me. I'd told myself for years that there was nothing I could have done, that Sarah's death was out of my hands. But the oracle had shown me the moment I'd chosen to do nothing. It wouldn't have mattered, I typed, desperation dripping from every letter. She was already gone. You don't know that, it replied. And now, you never will. I pushed the laptop away, my body trembling. My mind raced, searching for an escape, for a way to undo the crushing guilt that the oracle had unearthed. But there was no escape. The truth was a cage, and the oracle held the key. What do you want me to do? I typed, my voice cracking as I spoke the words aloud. The response was immediate. Let go. Let go? Of what? Of Sarah? Of the guilt? Of myself? I didn't understand, and yet deep down I knew that the oracle was right. I had to let go. But how? The screen went black, and a final message appeared. You have the answer. The laptop shut itself off, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence of my apartment. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the urge to open it again. The oracle's words lingered in my mind, haunting but strangely liberating. Maybe it was right. Maybe I did have the answer. But finding it would be the hardest thing I'd ever done. I didn't sleep that night. The oracle's final message. There is more to see, echoed in my mind, intertwining with the images it had shown me. Sarah's face, her unsent message, her final moments. My chest felt like it was caving in, the weight of guilt and truth pressing down on me with unbearable force. By dawn, I was still sitting at the desk, the laptop in front of me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my mind a battlefield of fear and resolve. What more could the oracle show me? What else was left to uncover? I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I couldn't stop myself either. With trembling hands, I opened the laptop. The screen flickered to life, and the black interface stared back at me. For the first time, the cursor wasn't blinking. Instead, it was still, waiting. I took a deep breath and typed, "What's left?" The response came slowly. The question you fear the most. My breath hitched. The question I feared the most? I stared at the screen, my mind racing. What was I afraid to ask? What truth was I not ready to face? The oracle's words were a mirror, reflecting back the doubts and guilt I'd tried so hard to bury. Finally, with shaking fingers, I typed, "What is my truth?" The screen froze for a moment, then shifted. Text appeared line by line, each word a dagger to my heart. You pushed her away. You let your anger blind you. You chose pride over love. My vision blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I didn't mean to, I typed, my hands trembling. But you did, the oracle replied. And now you carry her with you. The words felt like a final blow, a truth I couldn't deny. I had spent years convincing myself that Sarah's death was a cruel accident, that there was nothing I could have done. But the oracle had stripped away that illusion, leaving me raw and exposed. I couldn't hide from it anymore. I had failed her. I had failed myself. How do I fix this? I typed, desperation bleeding into every keystroke. The screen remained still for a long moment. Then, finally, the oracle replied, "You cannot change the past, but you can honor it." Honor it? The words felt hollow, meaningless in the face of what I'd lost. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair as I stared at the screen. How? I typed, my voice barely a whisper. The response was simple. Let her go. Let her go. The idea seemed impossible. Sarah wasn't just a memory. She was a part of me, a wound that refused to heal. How could I let her go? How could I move on when every moment without her felt like a betrayal? The screen shifted again, and a final message appeared. Say goodbye. My chest tightened. My hands hovered over the keyboard, frozen. How could I say goodbye to someone who had defined so much of my life? But as the seconds stretched into minutes, I realized I had no choice. The oracle had brought me here, to this moment, not to torment me, but to free me. And if I didn't take that step, I'd remain a prisoner of my own guilt forever. With tears streaming down my face, I typed, "Goodbye, Sarah." The screen went black. For a long time I sat there, the silence of the room wrapping around me like a shroud. But something was different now. The air felt lighter, the weight on my chest less crushing. The oracle was gone, and with it, the shadows that had haunted me for so long. I closed the laptop and stood up. The sun was rising, casting warm light through the window. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The journey the oracle had taken me on was brutal, but it had given me something I hadn't realized I needed. Clarity. As I stepped outside, the morning air cool against my skin, I whispered one last thing to the memory of Sarah. I'll carry you with me, but I won't let you hold me down anymore. Maybe now, I can finally rest. And for the first time, I meant it. I walked back inside, the rising sun casting its light through the empty apartment. The stillness felt final, almost serene. As I sat at the desk one last time, I felt the weight of everything that had been said, everything I had seen. I opened the drawer and pulled out the revolver I'd hidden away years ago, a relic of darker days I thought I'd left behind. Goodbye, Sarah, I whispered again, this time to the empty room. The sound of the shot echoed, and then there was silence,